Hello. I wanted to welcome you all to this section of your masterclass. My name is Terry Woods, and I represent Core Health and Fitness. Um, just a little bit before we get started, I'm recording this from my home, and I was very excited to be invited from Rawl to participate. Just so you know, Core Health and Fitness is a manufacturer of five very well known brands. And I understand today the topic is experience. And I love that word. It's a wonderful word. It means so many things. For example, at a restaurant, um, it could be the taste, it could be the smell, it could be the sound. Everything comes together to create an experience. And for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I want to be able to explain to you what we at Core Health and Fitness do before we make a product that is focused on creating that experience. Now, I understand we're just one small thing in what everyone's trying to create in the health and wellness space, but it's really important, and I'll hit on this, throughout the entire presentation, that everything has to come together to create the experience you're looking for. And what I want to make sure you get out of these next 10 to 15 slides is that we do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that our product adds to the experience. So Core Health and Fitness, we feel we're more than just a gym equipment company. We offer solutions. We're looking at a lot of different things, whether it be through marketing or education or customer service. We're always looking at providing, the entire solution. And, this is just one element of what we do. So I'm excited to talk about it. Myself, I've been with the organization for over 25 years. I'm currently the vice president of global sales operation, and I'm always on the front end of our selling process. For 8 years, I was in a department called product management, where all we did was try to understand what a user or a buyer or a technician or a trainer wanted so that we could work with our engineering team to create the product. And I'm going to explain a little bit of that today. So before we get started, I want to be the first one to tell you I am not trying to tell you that if you buy our brands, you're going to immediately sell more memberships or create that experience. It's not about that. However, just like a restaurant has to make a decision on what type of soda or pop or alcohol or food they serve, it's the same decision you have to make in regards to what it is you're going to offer your members. So the brands of Stairmaster, Schwinn, Nautilus, Star Trek, Throwdown have to complement the experience you're trying to drive. And we believe that one of our selling benefits at Core is that our brands do indeed enhance the experience. They're very well known throughout the world. In fact, it was back in around 2018 we conducted a study on our brands with users, not with buyers, not with board members, but people who actually used the product. And we did a study of over 6,500 consumers all throughout the world, and we just asked them three simple questions. Do you know who we are? Have you ever used us? And have you ever used us in the last 3 months? And what's important about that is, again, as people are coming into your facility, you want to make sure there's name brand recognition with certain things that you're offering. And I'll go into this here in just a second because it's a very important point. But when we did this study, we were very happy to see that our brands ranked in the top 10, all four of the brands that we were studying at that time. So you can see Stairmaster was ranked number 2, Nautilus was ranked number 4, Schwinn was ranked number 6, and then Star Trek was number 9. And the beauty of that is several different brands that would be going in to validate or justify what you've done to your membership base, what you're giving to them. And so, brands are extremely important. What makes up a brand, though, are all the elements of the design and what goes into it and what you offer someone. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully by the end of this, you can sit back and say, more goes into the decision on what goes on a product than most people think. So, when you look at our brands, we'll start with Stairmaster. Stairmaster, when we did our studies, we realized, the edginess of it. This is a high intensity brand. It's, we say it's a brand that people love to hate. People are going to get onto these products and really want to sweat and really want to work out and quote unquote punish themselves. Um, so you'll see in all of our marketing and advertising and social media posts, it's more geared towards that Spartan athlete or a very competitive individual. Schwinn is about being inclusive. It's about community. It's about creating a space where people can come together. They can exercise, but it can be more about the lighting and the music and an instructor that ties everything together. Schwinn is the number one group cycle brand name in the market today, and it's all driven by everything that supports it. Nautilus is the original. It's the originator of strength, and you'll see this here later on in my presentation. 50 years ago, it invented what is known today now as the select rise strength movement. The inventor at that time, Arthur Jones, made it very clear he was trying to take a machine to replicate a dumbbell. And he spent a lot of time trying to create that safety so that he could overtrain, strength train, and in doing so, he created some of the best strength curves in the world today. Star Track is your core main cardio line. The brand grew up trying to understand how to take that main floor and simply create an experience for the user. And it was all focused on the user. How do we make sure that that user can go into the product, feel comfortable, feel intelligent, keep working out, and then come back and want to use that product again? And then the new brand that we just acquired over a year ago is Throwdown. Throwdown is a functional training product line offering Throwdown rigs and free weights and soft goods, and it's one of the fastest growing areas in a facility today. And so here at Core, what we're doing is we're watching what all of our buyers are looking at and seeing how the space changes from time to time. And this area has grown considerably in the last 2 years. And it really drove us to make a product decision to be able to support this because the space in a facility is being devoted to functional training. So let me talk to you a little bit about, those are our 5 brands. Let me share with you a little bit of something we call our design platform. And our design platform is created on 4 things. And this is the meat of the presentation. This is the most important stuff. Number 1, most importantly, the product has to function as a user expects it to function. What I'm saying here is you could put all of the great features on a product you want, but if it doesn't do the base thing it's supposed to do, you'll never get to experience those features. So, I go back to the Nautilus strength curve. If you're to create a phone holder and QR codes that teach a user how to use the exercise better, or a neat way to adjust the weight plates or the seat or whatever it might be, if you go away from the Nautilus strength curve, you've lost the user. You have to be able to create the most basic function, and I call it quality of use. So think about purchasing a very expensive automobile and it has Wi-Fi on it, and it plays all kinds of sounds, and the stereo system is just amazing. And with a touch of a button on your phone, you can open the door. But if it doesn't drive from 0 to 60 and get you to where you need to go, then you don't have that quality of use. And so the first thing in our design platform is how to create the most basic needs for the user. We did a treadmill project back in 2001, and we had all of these great ideas. In fact, if you've experienced our products, we have user controllable fans that go into the display. And we always said no one's going to use those fans, even though they're the greatest thing in the world, unless you get to a point where you can have a soft, stable, usable treadmill. And that's the most important thing is if you have a soft, usable, stable treadmill, you then can go ahead and share those fun features. The second thing is to follow a consistent set of guidelines. We call this truly our design platform, but every decision that we make has to be based off of a set of rules, and I'll share that with you. The third thing, anytime that we create a feature, we want to make sure it has a story. It has a story for either the user, the buyer, the technician, or the trainer. Sometimes we get really lucky and a feature will have a story for all four. And this is important for you to think through because as you're creating your experience, you need to do the same thing. You need to understand your audience and make sure there's a good story that tells the experience specific to that user, buyer, or technician. And then finally, we have a phrase at Core called only at. And this is, again, something very important for all companies. What's the one thing or the two things that you can provide that your competition cannot? We always try to make sure that whenever we're developing a product, we have a feature that cannot be replicated in the marketplace. So let me go through these really quickly. The basics, the image you see up there on the left of Arnold Schwarzenegger is a very famous one, and that's on one of the very first Nautilus strength machines. The reason Nautilus grew was because that machine, not very attractive, a lot of metal, it had the best absolute quality of use. It felt perfect, and we've taken that into account as we've made changes to maybe add on some of the nicer look or some of the features, whether it be a dial to select the weight or, a design aesthetic so that it gives you a nice line of sight in your facility. We cannot go away from how it feels. I can't stress this enough. Before you can add any features that wow a user, you have to make sure that you do not depart on what the product should be doing in the first place. We're in the middle of launching a brand new Schwinn bike, and you would think a group cycle is pretty basic, but there are so many elements that go into a group cycle that biomechanics are so critical about that if you go away from those to make a better design, but you increase the width on the pedals or you change the geometry from the saddle to the handlebars, you end up creating a bad experience. There's a lot of consumer products on the market today that have a great software package, but they fail on the physical product. And what will happen over time is people will go away from that physical product because quality of use is the most important thing. So as you're developing your facilities, the number one thing you have to answer is, why are they coming to my facility? And you can ask that 5 times, and whatever the answer is, that's what you need to go make sure you do best right from the start. The second thing is our formula. So what I like to say with our formula and our product design is we're attempting to do 5 things. When someone walks into the door, we're trying to catch their eye. We're trying to stand out. And then after we stand out, we try to invite them over to the product. It's really important. You can stand out and be very scary or what we say is non-approachable. But it's really important to be able to stand out and then also to be welcoming. Then we want to make them feel smart, and that's a key one because the word intuitive, which I'll share with you, doesn't just mean easy to use. Please understand that. Easy to use is important, but we also want to make someone feel smart. How many times have you had an experience with either computer software or your phone or an automobile where you go in and the machine works exactly the way you think it should work? And it makes you feel like, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing. It wasn't just about an easy start button or a green button, but it functions the way you think it should function. Then we want to encourage people to keep going. We want to make sure that they can go a little bit longer, 3 more minutes, a little bit faster, 5/10 of a mile faster, or just a little bit harder, push that resistance. How do we keep them going? And then most importantly, and this is critical, how do we get them back? Because what we're trying to do is create a circle here. And in this circle, the words that we use are distinctive, approachable, intuitive, motivational, and rewarding. And let me explain to you just a little bit about how we use these. Remember, I said I was on the marketing side, I was on the product side. When we're developing a product, we're working with the engineering team. And that engineering team is always focused on the cost, the schedule, and the performance. And as an engineer, you're trying to reduce the cost, decrease the amount of time it takes to come out with a product, and make sure that it works perfectly. But as a true engineer, if you ask them to design a treadmill, they'd design a little box. It wouldn't be anything that a user would want. And so we always struggled with trying to work with the engineering team, because if you brought up a feature, they would ultimately tell you how much more it would cost, how much longer it would take to design, and the potential for risk on breaking. The fan that I spoke about in the display is a great example. When we came out with that in 2001, the engineers were concerned that it was going to cost us about $30 more per treadmill. They thought it was going to take 6 more months to design the electronics and the software to control that fan, and they were worried that it would increase the risk of parts breaking. But from a marketing side, we used this formula. No one else in the market had it. It was very distinctive. People wanted to come up and see what the fan would do while they were on their own treadmill. We put in the software an automatic start feature after 60 seconds so the user had the experience of the fan after they got on the product. It absolutely kept people on the machine because people felt they could work out a little longer or go just a little harder because they had airflow. And then absolutely people came back to use the treadmill with the fans. And so that's an example of a feature where we would have a debate and an argument between marketing and engineering, and those 5 words are what allowed us to progress to the next level. So as you're looking at your experience, ask yourself the same thing. What are you trying to achieve? And then you've heard me say this was back in 2001. That was 20 years ago. To this day, we've remained consistent with these words, and we've made decisions based off of these words. The story. I mentioned this earlier. Make sure that your product design has a story for a user, a buyer, a trainer, a technician. These are the 4 that we've chosen, and each one of them can be a little different. For a user, the question is how is the decision we're about to make making the wellness experience more enjoyable? It's a pretty simple thing, but take the fan again. When we put that on there, we knew that users would want to use it because it would either replicate running outside, or airflow would make them feel cooler. An interesting one that we weren't expecting was people that didn't like airflow, but if you had a large fan in the group cardio area, people had to endure the fan, and so people could turn it off. So it was a self-selecting mechanism. On our recumbent bike, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture here, we actually have armrests. And those armrests are designed because we know the user that's going to use that product tends to read magazines or newspapers, or they're there to exercise, but it's not as intense as maybe say a group cycle class or a HIIT class. But that experience of being able to read their magazine a little longer without having their shoulders fatigue or go sore was a great story. For a buyer, it's real simple. Is there a business purpose to this feature? Can I save money? Can I increase revenue? Can I deliver the experience that I'm trying to create in my facility? So we always need to make sure that when we're looking at a feature set, does it apply to a business rationale? Trainer, this is an interesting one. The next 2 are actually interesting because I think a lot of people don't think about this level, but is the feature going to provide a better value to their clientele? Does it make them more valuable to your business? And then finally, the technician. Will this allow me to execute my job at the highest level? A technician is a lot like an engineer. And so when we're talking with the engineers and they're saying, listen, we don't want this feature because we're afraid of it breaking or being serviced, that's when we bring the technicians in and ask them as well, how can we do this and also make your job easier? There's a picture down here on the bottom left, and it's the switch mechanism for our strength equipment. It's called lock and load. And instead of a pin, we use an on-off switch. So you would, like a light switch, move the switch from the red off to the green on, and then you've selected that weight stack to be utilized in the select rise. What's unique about this feature, it's just a simple switch. However, to a user, anywhere they're sitting on our product, they can reach over without getting in a compromised position, turn the weight plate on, and engage the exercise. So from a user perspective, we've made it much more enjoyable to use the product. You don't no longer have to get off, take a pin, count down the weights, insert the pin, go back on, sit down, readjust, and work out. We've made it much easier. To the buyer, there's a huge business rationale. The number one replaced part in any facility are weight stack pins. And this is because they can be removed, they can be taken. A lot of members think that's their pin. They can walk away with it. And from that standpoint, you're replacing pins all the time. Another reason that it's really important from a buyer's perspective is liability. There's a lot of times that people will be holding on to the machine, take the pin out, which then releases the weight and can possibly injure the user. It's impossible to do that with a switch-like system. For the trainer, we've seen some really unique uses of our lock and load system. We've seen people engage 2 to 3 pins, and then they'll perform drop sets. So as someone's fatiguing in their exercise, they can quickly stop, turn off the highest weight, go to the second highest weight, continue their exercise, and work in a drop set fashion. And from a technician, it's pretty simple. When you have to replace one of these lock and load switches, you can actually take one of the switches off, but the entire weight stack is still working. And therefore, the machine is not out of order, which is what a technician will be measured on. So just one example of, when you're creating this switch, you have to think of the story first. What are we trying to sell? There's nothing more annoying than someone designing something and it has no use whatsoever, but because they could design it, they did. And so we always try to make sure there's value. If you go through our product line, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of stories that we could go through that would allow us to tell you, how the feature was designed. So for this, please think of your membership base as they're coming in. Make sure you have a story for the experience you're about to create. Finally, only at. Only at is a phrase we use at Core, which allows us to say, this is the only company you can come to get this feature. And we make sure as we're designing, we're looking at our competition, we're looking at what the users want, we're staying consistent with our stories and our design platform. But we want to make sure we create something that allows us to go out and say, you can only get it here. We've launched several products in the last 2 years. One of the best ones is our new Stairmaster 10G. It's our rotating staircase, and this will be the last story I talk about. But with that product, we found that members like to get onto a stair climbing type machine, put it on very low resistance, not high resistance, and drive it, kind of like put power into the machine so they would overdrive the system. And if your product is not designed for that, the braking mechanism is going to fail. And so with the release about a year ago of our Stairmaster 10G, we went ahead and created a program called Overdrive. And Overdrive is simply something that allows you to calibrate the user so that we know the weight of that user. And then it creates a high intensity program that goes into a driving mode and then goes into a resting mode. The best part about that is the handrail design. And this goes back to making sure that you're thinking through the entire process. If you see the new handrail design on our products, you're going to see there's a sled push and also a wheelbarrow carry. And this is so that during the intense driving mechanism, you can replicate those motions while you're on the product. So make sure you've got 3 or 4 things at any time that you can say, this is unique to my company and you can't get it anywhere else. Most importantly, through all of this, the time that you're taking right now to listen in and go through this masterclass is going to pay back tremendously. I hope that you understand that at Core Health and Fitness, it's more than just trying to sell a product. We work with our partners, we work with our customers. We want to provide great solutions, but most importantly, we want to provide a great experience. And I want to thank you all and good luck and have a great class.